Hi there guys, it's Adam Martin here, and welcome back to another video, and it's finally here, the first episode has finally dropped. Doctor Who has returned to our TV screens with The Star Beast, the first special that is celebrating the 60th anniversary of the programme. It was October last year we had the last televised Doctor Who, so long ago now, where we saw Jodie Whittaker regenerate into David Tennant, who was confused as to why this face had come back, all that sort of stuff. And now The Star Beast has finally premiered on BBC One here in the UK and Disney Plus on the rest of the world, and what did I think? Well, that's what we're here to talk about. Before we get into it, of course, this is going to be a spoiler review. I'm going to be talking about the story itself, the various plot points, various things that happened. So if you haven't watched The Star Beast yet, do not watch this video. Go onto the iPlayer, go onto your recording, go onto Disney Plus and watch it first before coming to check this out. A big draw for so many viewers who are going to tune into this is the fact that David Tennant and Catherine Tate are returning to the roles of the Doctor and Donna respectively. Now, when they had their full series all the way back in 2008, that was when the revival of Doctor Who arguably peaked, certainly in terms of, I'd argue, like the casual viewer interest. Of course, us fans were always going to watch Doctor Who, but I remember 2008, I was 12 years old at the time, and I remember the sheer excitement around everyone, even people who didn't normally watch Doctor Who. Everybody was tuning in, everybody loved the dynamic between the Doctor and Donna, at least people, you know, in my school, for example. I know, coming back to this, a lot of people were tuning in because the Doctor and Donna were coming back. And of course, Russell T Davies, lest we forget, is returning to helm the show as the showrunner. So a lot of people instantly, you know, prophesized that Doctor Who would become quote-unquote good again. I personally enjoyed a lot of Jodie Whittaker's time as the Doctor and Chris Chibnall running it. I know a lot of people didn't. You know, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I did quite enjoy it. But it did make me cautious that even though RTD was returning to helm, and obviously David Tennant and Catherine Tate are coming back, we need to wait and see the finished product, you know, to determine it. So I think, especially as we got closer to transmission, I saw a few fans on social media started to almost get cold feet or get bated breath thinking, oh, you know, oh my god, what if it's not actually that good? So, just general thoughts. What did I think? I had a great time. This story, The Star Beast, is so much fun. I think it's a great way to reintroduce people back into Doctor Who. It's a lot of fun. It doesn't take itself too seriously. In some moments, it takes itself very seriously in others, but arguably at the right places. It's a very straightforward story. I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's a very straightforward story that a lot of people can get into that is arguably quite accessible. And of course, The Star Beast itself, for those who may not know, is actually a story that already exists. It was made as a comic strip all the way back in 1980 in the pages of what was then Doctor Who Weekly, the magazine. That story was written by Pat Mills and John Wagner, or Wagner, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but it was written by these two guys, and what a special moment for them, surely. You know, over 40 years since they wrote this story for, you know, a comic strip, a Doctor Who comic strip, that it's been translated, adapted into the big screen. Obviously not all the elements are the same. I think the key ones obviously being the Wraith Warriors, those guys with the big red eyes, and of course the Meep. Beep the Meep, the Meep, whatever you want to call it. So, it's been 15 years since the Doctor and Donna, and I'm delighted to say that both actors, David Tennant and Catherine Tate, slipped back into these roles rather seamlessly. It's like no time has passed at all. Their chemistry, their dynamic is as good as ever. In terms of that big elephant in the room, you know, of how will Donna remember, I'll come to that a little bit later in the video, but what I did appreciate about The Star Beast was how it opened. It literally opens with both David Tennant and Catherine Tate looking down the lens, basically explaining things. The Doctor's mainly catching people up on what happened with the Doctor and Donna 15 years ago, and then Donna's sort of explaining that she feels like something's missing, that the story's not quite over. I know some people will probably find that egregious, you know, fans who of course know this sort of stuff, but you got to remember, if this is to try and drag someone back in, particularly people who haven't watched since 2008, it's just a great little recap to remind them of what they enjoyed so much and the promise that they're going to get more of it. Before I get into like the story beats or the characters or anything like that, can we just talk about the budget? This episode looked slick. It's beautifully shot. Set design's great, CGI's great, particularly any of the work on the Meep itself was wonderfully done. The first few scenes of it, when it's like skulking around, I thought it looked amazing. Even when it, well, I was about to say it, well, I will say a spoiler, but we'll come to that later. But let's just say anything involving the Meep looked fantastic, was really happy with that. So we're getting some returning faces, not just the Doctor and Donna, we're getting Donna's family. Namely, we're getting Jacqueline King, who's returning as Donna's mum, Sylvia Noble. We're getting Carl Collins, who's making his return as Sean Temple, who of course we saw many years ago too. And again, great that we get these characters back. They also feel so familiar. With the new addition, of course, of Donna and Sean's daughter, which is Rose Temple Noble, played by Yasmin Finney. Now, she did a phenomenal job, I thought, in this role. You know, a character that definitely embodies a lot of what Donna stands for, but also ushering in, like, that sense of the new, the 2023 generations and all that sort of stuff. And say what you will, because I know for a fact that some people are going to have a problem with this, and I'd argue that's more on you, but the way they play, like, Rose's gender, their identity into the story, I really loved. Like, that whole sense of non-binary and how it plays into... Again, I'll explain all this later. I thought Rose was a great character to include in this story, and how she was included was great. And Yasmin Finney, again, top marks on the acting there. It's funny because Donna tells a joke that Rose, the character, is bad at acting, hence why she doesn't want to go to the school play. But Yasmin Finney couldn't be further for, you know, she's the opposite. Phenomenal actor, really happy with that. And I sincerely hope that this isn't the last we see of Rose across these 3 specials. I hope that they come back. And again, I know a sticking point for some people will be there are what some people call, I guess, quote-unquote, woke politics. You know, there's mentions of pronouns and stuff like that. And again, that doesn't faze me at all. I think that's a completely fair and normal thing to bring up in a drama that's, you know, set in 2023, rooted in the current time period. The plot is quite breezy itself. It's an hour long, this episode, as I think all 3 specials are, and this didn't feel like an hour. Honestly, this zipped by. It's, you know, straight into the action, which I appreciate. They have those, whilst a lot of it is like action, there's a big shootout between unit soldiers and the Wraith Warriors that maybe felt like a tiny bit too long, but not to like any massive detriment. But there are moments within this where they do allow for like more quieter moments, more serious, more emotional moments. One thing I particularly liked was the mention of Wilf. Now, of course, Wilf, Donna's granddad, is a character we saw a lot through Series 4. He was quite an important character, particularly towards the end of the 10th Doctor's time. He was a very important character. However, we don't see Wilf in this episode. We don't see him in the Star Beast. Now, this is an interesting talking point because, of course, when this was being filmed, we saw set photos of David Tennant pushing around Bernard Cribbins in a wheelchair, and this was about a couple of months before he sadly passed away. They do make mention of Wilf, and they say he's not with us anymore, which the Doctor takes to mean, oh, he's passed away, and the Doctor's reaction to that is heartbreaking, man. It's such a little thing, but you can just tell how this character, this alien who's seen millions of people interacted with, has such fondness for this one human who resonated so much with him in the end. But it is cleared up that Wilf actually isn't dead. He's in, I can't remember, was it protected accommodation, sheltered accommodation? He's being looked after. So in the Doctor Who universe, Wilf is still currently alive at 94 years old. Now, at the end of the episode, of course, the Doctor suggests that they take a trip in the TARDIS to see Wilf because of the ramifications that I'll talk about in just a minute. But then that doesn't happen. Now, people speculated, did they reshoot things after Bernard passed away? Have they left stuff in? I'd like to think that maybe in the 3rd episode, so assuming everything goes all okay again, that they will get that moment to see Wilfred Mott have that little moment between him, David Tennant's face of the Doctor, and with Donna as well. I'd really like to hope that's the case, but we won't know until the 9th of December, so we'll have to wait and see on that front. I want to talk about the Meep a little bit. I remember when it was announced or like revealed that the Star Beast was actually getting an adaptation, that we were going to see the Wraith Warriors and Beep the Meep in all their glory, 80s designs and all. I know again some people were worried, saying like, oh god, you know, you're trying to reintroduce Doctor Who to so many people who haven't watched in years, and this is what you're going with. I mean, I thought it was pretty smart. You know, the Meep set up to be this really cute, cuddly character, and by God, it's cute. You know, to begin with, when it's acting all injured and stuff, it is adorable. And Miriam Margolyes, who of course voices the Meep, does a phenomenal job. But you know, spoiler coming up. And I did vaguely remember this when I read the comic years and years ago, but I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't have known this. that the Meep actually has a darker side, which does come out in this episode. And again, Miriam does a great job. She flips on a dime, going from all cute and cuddly to like sadistic, evil, conniving, whereas the Meep ends up becoming the main villain of the piece as opposed to the Wraith Warriors. So, a classic subverting your expectations. I guess die-hard fans would have seen or predicted that this was coming, but I bet you a lot of people wouldn't, and I'm sure it was a fun, wacky little surprise. But the Meep in general was great. I didn't find it too egregious. I didn't find it annoying. I thought Miriam did a great vocal performance. So, yeah, in this house, we're big fans of the Meep. The other major plot point I want to divulge, of course, as many were asking, well, if David Tennant's doctors come back, or any doctor for that matter, if Donna finds out who they are, etc., then she'll die. That's been long established. That's been 15 years in the making. Now, before, again, spoilers coming up, this does get undone. This does get resolved in a way. Now, I know a lot of people, even before this aired, were saying if they dare tamper that ending, if they make it that she remembers, then that is, Series 4 is ruined, Doctor Who is, yada, 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 yada. My mantra on it was, before it aired, I thought, if they do it in a way that makes sense, that is clear, that doesn't feel hammy by any means to my personal viewing experience, then I was fine with them changing the status quo. But if it was like a nonchalant reason or it just happened, that could have been a bit disappointing. So the reason we get is, the Doctor and Donna are in dire straits. They're in two halves of this ship. They've got to stop it before it destroys London. And Donna can help only if she has that Time Lord part of her brain accessible. And David Tennant says a bunch of words. It kind of reminded me of Bucky and Captain America the Winter Soldier, how a bunch of words like trigger the remembrance, and they are a bunch of random words, but I kind of like that. But anyway, the Doctor says these words with very heavy hearts, and before we know it, the Doctor Donna, as it were, is back. She's got all that Time Lord part of her brain back, and they save the day before, of course, she collapses to the floor and inevitably dies. And I must say, when you think that when it's seen that she's gone, it's quite a tender moment, especially for the Doctor. You can just see how much this woman means to him. And even before that, the famous, why does it have to be this? Turns out that was from this episode. People thought that had come later. But I think it just shows how much, not just David Tennant's interpretation of the Doctor, but how this character as a whole cares for this human being and her family by extension. But Donna comes back to life, and of course, you're all thinking, how? How can she do that? And it's revealed that when she had Rose, their child, it became not just a thing that Donna had, it became a shared inheritance. So when she gained the Time Lord part of her brain back, so did Rose. She also experienced that. They do explain how they were able to then let that Time Lord conscious side of them go, and it does play into a lot of the sense of gender and non-binary. And I did love, by the way, because you remember back in 2008 how when Donna's suffering from having that Time Lord brain, she's going binary, 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 binary all over again, and how when she says it when she remembers, you get Rose saying non-binary, which of course matches perfectly with her character, and I thought was a really nice merging of those two different things coming together. And the explanation of how they let it go again is equally played out really beautifully. I've got to give preps to RTD, man. He knows how to write a script. He knows how to cleverly include these things in, as did Stephen Moffat, as did Chris Chibnall, as do many of the writers who work on Doctor Who. I was left smiling because, I've seen so many fan theories. I've had my own theories about how Donna might remember. And then it just became something as simple as, duh, she had a child. Of course that's going to get passed on. Do you know what? It seems like such a simple thing that they've then used, but I think that's great. I think, again, props to Russell for doing that. A really clever, well, not even subversion, just a very clever explanation. Great stuff. And one of the last main things I want to talk about is the TARDIS. There was a lot of speculation after David Tennant appeared. Is he going to use Jodie's TARDIS interior? Is he going to have a brand new one? We'd seen some very sketchy parts of leak photos, but I think a lot of people were speculating that was for Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor Who's coming this Christmas. But we do see the brand new TARDIS interior, and wow, what a set. I mean, that thing is huge with lots of winding paths. You've got roundels on the wall everywhere. I thought it was a very interesting blend of the old and the new. You've got the circular roundels and a lot of grey tones, which of course are very reminiscent of classic Doctor Who, which employed that a lot. But then you had all the modernisms, like the huge main console room, the winding paths, the different levels, the more elaborate console itself, the huge time rotor, the thing in the middle that goes up and down. I thought it was a really nice blend of the old and the new. I'm not a fan of, like, grayscales on the whole, and that goes for Classic Who as well. As much as I love that classic TARDIS room design and, like, with the old consoles and stuff, grey is just not my colour, so when I saw it, I was a bit like, oh, okay, we're going with grey. But there are, you know, the roundels light up in different colours, console's interesting, so, you know, not my favourite TARDIS interior, but definitely not my least favourite. And then, of course, at the end of the story, Donna pours coffee all over the TARDIS console, which sets it on fire. I thought that was a bit of wonderfully silly exaggeration, plummeting the TARDIS into anywhere in time and space, which sets us up nicely for the next episode, which is titled While Blue Yonder, that will go out on the 2nd of December. So, overall thoughts for me on the Star Beast. As I said, I had a great time. This was so much fun. I've been in pantomime rehearsals recently. That's why there hasn't been many uploads across all 3 of my different channels on the AMTV network. But, you know, to come in after a 6-day rehearsal week when you're tired and exhausted, to sit down, flick on BBC One and watch an hour of Doctor Who, featuring, yes, faces that I'm familiar with, that feel very familiar and comforting, but in a story that was fun, fast-paced, silly, funny, serious, emotional. It is the RTD hand working again, and it felt to me one part nostalgic. There were moments that felt very 2008, but then moments that felt brand new, felt like just how Doctor Who, in my view, should be adapting to modern times, the modern TV landscape, etc, etc. So if these specials are anything to, well, if this special, the Star Beast, is anything to go by, I think the following 2, we're in for a treat. And I'm sure they won't mind me saying this, but I watched this with my mum and dad, who do watch Doctor Who. You know, they've kept up with it as it's gone on. But my mum in particular did say that she loved David Tennant as the Doctor. And she, you know, she was a bit skeptical with him coming back, with Russell coming back, all that sort of stuff, how it was going to work. But immediately when the credits ran, she was like, I really enjoyed that. That was so much fun. Return to form, all this sort of stuff. So that's the kind of effect I guess this wants to have on viewers like my mum and dad. People who maybe tune in or haven't tuned in ages, liked a particular era, namely David Tennant's, and they're going to come back via these specials. So great job, Russell, David, Catherine, the full cast, the creative teams, the many creatives who worked on this. Good job to you. Last thing to mention, I didn't even talk about, we got the new theme music, which I think sounds great. I love the new title sequence, the TARDIS flying through different avenues of like the vortex, just gorgeous, really beautifully realised title sequence. Just a very quick touch I forgot to mention as well. I want to touch on Ruth Madeley's character, Shirley, who's a unit scientific advisor. Badass as anything, by the way, shooting rockets and darts out of her wheelchair. Mad stuff. I'd like to, I think this isn't the last we see of her, because she's appeared in some shots in the overall trailer that we haven't seen yet, but I really like this character. I'm familiar with her in the Doctor Who realm as Hebe, of course, in the companion to the 6th Doctor, but she plays a great role here, so I'm hoping we see a lot more of Shirley, and it seems like we will, probably in the Giggle, which is the last of these specials. So yeah, big props to the Star Beast, a great adaptation, a great continuation of the overall Doctor Who story, really fun start to the 60th anniversary specials, absolutely the right way to go. Next week, While Blue Yonder, we literally know next to nothing about this episode, which makes me think it's going to be very odd, very surreal, very wacky. Russell says it's going to be very scary. Let's see what we make of that in a week's time. But I really enjoyed the Star Beast, but I want to know what you think. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments down below. Did you enjoy the Star Beast? Did you not enjoy it? Let me know your thoughts. You know, keep it civil. We agree to disagree. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please leave a like on it. It really helps us out. With the following 2 specials, I'm not going to be able to see them live, unfortunately, because I'll be performing in pantomime. But I do hope to get a review video out to you on them. Certainly the next day on the Sunday, Monday at the latest. So keep your eyes peeled for those here on AMTV Who. Subscribe to us here as well if you're brand new. We'd love to have you aboard here. I've been Adam Martin from AMTV Who. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.